Maya Anderson had always believed in the power of hard work and humility. In her early 40s, she exuded a quiet confidence, the kind that only comes from years of dedication and overcoming countless challenges. Maya was a woman of great character, though you wouldn't know it from her unassuming demeanor as she walked through the hospital halls in a simple nurse's uniform. Today, she was covering for a colleague who was on leave, taking on duties she hadn't handled regularly in years. But this didn't bother her. Maya wasn't one to seek recognition or shy away from any task. Maya had started her career as a nurse, balancing medical school with long shifts and countless sleepless nights, fueled by relentless determination. Her journey shaped her into the compassionate leader she was today, a medical director at one of the city's most prominent hospitals. The path to success hadn't been easy. Maya had grown up in a low-income neighborhood, surrounded by limited opportunities, but she refused to let her background limit her. Instead, it motivated her to strive for something greater. Nursing was her first step, but her vision had always been to make a broader impact. Over the years, Maya's expertise and unwavering dedication were recognized by the right people, leading to her promotion as the hospital's medical director. Despite her prestigious position, Maya stayed grounded, believing that true leadership was not defined by titles, but by understanding her team and the daily challenges they faced. This was why she still found herself stepping into scrubs, helping on the floor when her team needed her. Most of the hospital staff knew her and respected her for her modesty and willingness to support them when things got busy. The hospital itself was a renowned institution, catering primarily to the wealthy and influential. Known for its advanced facilities, cutting-edge technology, and highly trained professionals, it was also marked by a rigid, hierarchical structure. Nurses, in particular, often bore the brunt of this, treated as lesser in both rank and value by some doctors. Maya had been quietly working to shift this culture since she stepped into her leadership role, though she knew it would take time. Among the doctors was Dr. Philip Morgan, a middle-aged man who had built his career with confidence and precision. While Dr. Morgan was respected for his skill, he was infamous for his arrogance. He had an impeccable track record with his patients, but was often dismissive and condescending toward his colleagues, especially the nurses. He treated them as though their only role was to follow his orders, rarely bothering with pleasantries or acknowledging their expertise. For Dr. Morgan, respect flowed only in one direction, upwards, toward those he deemed worthy. Dr. Morgan's colleagues, especially the nurses, found him unbearable. He treated them with minimal respect, speaking as though their only purpose was to carry out his orders. It wasn't uncommon for him to bark commands without a single please or thank you, his manner suggesting he saw nurses as inferior. For Dr. T. Morgan, respect was strictly reserved for those he considered equals or superiors in the hospital's rigid hierarchy. He had no patience for the opinions of nurses, viewing teamwork as little more than everyone complying with his wishes without question. In his mind, his judgment was flawless, and anyone who dared question it simply didn't understand the complexities of his decisions. Maya was well aware of Dr. Morgan, though their paths rarely crossed. She'd heard complaints from the nurses under her care, but preferred to address these issues at the cultural level rather than targeting individuals. Her goal was always to improve the hospital's environment rather than single out specific people. Still, she knew that, sooner or later, her path would cross with Dr. Morgan's, especially in a hospital where power dynamics constantly came into play. Today was that day. Dr. Morgan arrived at the hospital in his usual hurry, not expecting anything out of the ordinary. His schedule was packed with surgeries, consultations, and what he regarded as the usual hassle of managing patient expectations. He had no patience for delays or mistakes, especially from the nursing staff, whom he often found too slow for his liking. As he entered the ward where Maya was temporarily stationed, he glanced around, barely noticing the staff before him. They were just nurses, after all, in his mind. Maya, busy reviewing patient charts, didn't notice him at first. She was focused on ensuring everything was in order for the patients under her care. Her demeanor was calm, her actions careful and deliberate as she made her rounds. She had no idea Dr. Morgan had entered the room or that he was about to make assumptions that would lead to an unavoidable confrontation. Dr. Morgan's eyes settled on her in the corner of the room, and he instantly assumed she was just another nurse. A quick judgment based solely on appearance. He didn't recognize her. To him, she was just another cog in the machine, a nurse whose job was to follow his instructions without question. Irritation already bubbling, Dr. Morgan strode toward her, setting the stage for an unexpected confrontation. Without a second thought, he began barking orders, unaware of the authority and respect that Maya held within the hospital. In the very hospital he believed himself to rule, Maya, ever the professional, turned calmly to face Dr. Morgan, her expression neutral, though her eyes held a quiet, undeniable strength he had yet to recognize. But soon would. She was focused on her tasks, checking patient charts and making sure everything was set for the upcoming rounds. Her movements were efficient, her precision showing years of experience. Maya didn't mind filling in for a nurse today. In fact, she welcomed it. It gave her the chance to reconnect with the day-to-day duties that had once grounded her as a young nurse. Suddenly, the sound of rapid footsteps and an impatient voice interrupted her concentration. Dr. Philip Morgan had entered the room, his presence commanding attention even before he spoke. Maya looked up briefly, acknowledging him with a polite nod before returning to her work without much fanfare. Dr. Morgan didn't return her greeting. Instead, his gaze fixated on her, his eyes narrowing, as though something about her presence irritated him from the start. "Are you planning to just stand there all day?" Dr. Morgan snapped, his voice sharp and condescending. "I need these patient files updated. Can't you follow simple instructions?" Maya paused, momentarily taken aback by his tone, but she quickly regained her composure, glancing down at the chart in her hand to ensure everything was in order before responding. "I'm following standard protocol, doctor. The files will be updated shortly." Her voice remained calm and measured. Dr. Morgan, however, wasn't interested in explanations. His eyes flashed with irritation as he waved her off dismissively, as if her response was a mere inconvenience. "I don't have time for excuses," he retorted, raising his voice. "This hospital is struggling enough as it is without staff like you slowing things down." The other nurses exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the tension thickening in the room. Maya could feel their eyes on her, and junior doctors nearby froze, unsure whether to step in or remain silent. While Dr. Morgan's habit of berating the staff wasn't unusual, something felt different this time. His words seemed sharper, more personal. Maya felt the sting of his words, not because they were accurate, but because of the assumptions beneath them. He hadn't given her a chance to explain herself, let alone prove her competence. He'd simply decided she was incapable, that she was beneath him. Still, she held her ground, refusing to let his words get the better of her. "I'm doing my job as instructed, doctor," Maya replied evenly, her voice steady despite the frustration she felt building inside. Maya kept her voice steady, her growing frustration held in check. "I'm ensuring that patient care is not compromised." But Dr. Morgan wasn't listening. His voice grew louder, catching the attention of others nearby. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," he said, gesturing toward Maya in an exaggerated manner. "No sense of urgency, no attention to detail. It's no wonder things don't run smoothly around here with staff like this." His words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. Maya felt the eyes of the room on her, but she kept her expression unchanged. She was hurt, yes, but more than that, she was angry. Not because he was right, but because he was wrong in every way that mattered. Dr. Morgan knew nothing of her qualifications, her background, or her role. He simply saw a nurse and decided she was the problem. His frustration continued to mount as he pressed on. "Maybe this is too much for you," he said, his words dripping with condescension. "Perhaps you're not suited for a place like this. Mistakes aren't an option in a hospital of this caliber." It was subtle, but Maya caught the implication instantly. A place like this. The underlying assumption was clear, that someone like her, a black woman in a nurse's uniform, was out of place in such a prestigious environment. She knew he would never have said this to another doctor or a nurse he respected. Maya glanced around the room, seeing the discomfort on the faces of her colleagues. They had heard the comment too, but no one intervened. Their silence was as painful as Dr. Morgan's words. A surge of anger rose within her, but she swallowed it. This wasn't the time or place. She could have easily corrected him. Could have told him right then that she was the medical director of the very hospital where he assumed she didn't belong, that she oversaw departments and wielded far more authority than he realized. But what would that accomplish? Confronting him publicly wouldn't change his underlying attitude or the unspoken biases that had led to this moment. Instead, she took a deep breath, centering herself. "I'll make sure everything is handled," she said quietly, her voice calm but firm. Maya kept her tone steady but firm, though Dr. Morgan barely acknowledged her words. Already turning away, he muttered, "Just get it done," storming off and leaving a thick trail of tension behind him. Maya stood there for a moment, still holding the patient chart, her mind racing. She felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She'd been humiliated in front of her colleagues, treated as though she were lesser, as though she didn't belong. And it wasn't just because she was filling in as a nurse today. It was because of who she was. A black woman standing in a place it's Dr. Born. Morgan felt she had no right to be. But Maya wasn't the type to let anger consume her. She wouldn't give Dr. Morgan the satisfaction of seeing her upset. She intended to finish her shift with the same quiet dignity she'd always carried. When the time came, she'd address the situation through the appropriate channels. Maya knew her worth, even if Dr. Morgan didn't. As she turned back to her work, she could feel the eyes of the staff on her again. This time, though, there was something different in their gazes. A quiet respect. They had witnessed what had happened, and, although no one had spoken up in the moment, they had seen Maya's grace under pressure. Dr. Morgan may have humiliated her publicly, but Maya had maintained her composure, a dignity that no one could take from her. When the long day finally came to an end, Maya was left with an unsettling heaviness she couldn't shake. After her shift, she returned to her office, the same office where she made critical decisions as the medical director of the hospital. But today she felt small, reduced to a nurse in the eyes of a man who hadn't known who she was, hadn't cared to ask, and had taken liberties he never should have. As she sat at her desk, she replayed the incident in her mind, the sting of Dr. Morgan's words echoing in her ears, each dismissive comment striking with a sense of finality. She'd endured worse in her career, certainly, but this felt different. It wasn't the blatant racism she had encountered in the past, nor the overt sexism. It was the subtle, insidious way Dr. Morgan had simply assumed she was incompetent, unworthy of respect. The casual disregard for her as a person cut deeper than anything else. Maya thought back to the long journey she had traveled to reach this point. She'd worked her way up from being a nurse, tirelessly pushing forward to earn her current role. Remembering the journey that had led her to her role as medical director, Maya reflected on the years of hard work, resilience, and sacrifice it had taken to get here. She recalled the late nights spent studying through medical school, the countless times she was the only black woman in the room, and all the moments when she was underestimated or dismissed. This wasn't new to her, but it still stung. Sighing, she pulled out her phone and texted her close friend and fellow colleague, Leah. They'd shared so much over the years, and Maya needed to talk to someone who would understand. Within minutes, Leah called, concern evident in her voice. "What happened today?" she asked, sensing Maya's distress. Maya hesitated for a moment before replying. "It was Dr. Morgan. He berated me in front of everyone, treated me like I was nothing." Leah sighed on the other end of the line. "What did he say?" Maya recounted the incident, her frustration still fresh. "He assumed I was incompetent, dismissed me like I didn't know what I was doing, and didn't even listen when I tried to explain. It was all right there in front of everyone. I could see the nurses and junior doctors looking at me, like I was just some helpless bystander." Leah was silent for a moment, and Maya could sense her friend's anger simmering. "And you didn't tell him?" Leah finally asked. Maya shook her head, though Leah couldn't see her. "No, I didn't think it would help. He wouldn't have listened, and I didn't want to make it a bigger issue right there. This isn't just about me, it's something bigger than one incident." Leah's voice softened. "You shouldn't have to put up with that, especially from him." Maya leaned back in her chair. "I know, but I need to approach this thoughtfully. It's not just about one confrontation. It's about the culture in this place. It's the way staff are treated, especially minority staff. I'll address it, but in the right way. Meanwhile, word of the incident had already started to ripple through the hospital. A few of the nurses who had witnessed the confrontation were huddled in the break room, their voices low and filled with disbelief. "Did you see what happened between Dr. Morgan and Maya earlier?" one nurse asked, shaking her head. "I couldn't believe the way he spoke to her, like she didn't know what she was doing." "I know, right?" another nurse added. "He acted like she was just some rookie who didn't belong here, but she handled it so well. I don't know how she stayed so calm." A senior nurse, overhearing the conversation, approached them, a thoughtful expression on her face. The senior nurse, who had been at the hospital for years and had known Maya long before she became medical director, walked over to join the conversation. "Do you know who Maya really is?" she asked, lowering her voice slightly. The younger nurses looked at one another in confusion, shaking their heads. "She's not just a nurse," the senior nurse continued. "She's the medical director of this entire hospital. Dr. Morgan didn't realize it, but he was talking down to his boss." The room fell silent as the weight of this revelation settled in. The nurses exchanged shocked glances, understanding the full gravity of what had just happened. Maya had endured that public humiliation without saying a word about her true position. Meanwhile, Dr. Morgan remained completely oblivious to the storm brewing around him. He had already moved on from the incident, chalking it up as just another moment of dealing with staff who needed more training. Later that day, while having coffee with a colleague, Dr. Morgan casually recounted the incident with Maya. "Had to put one of the nurses in her place earlier," he said with a smirk. "She was slowing things down, not paying attention to what needed to be done. Some people just aren't cut out for this kind of work, you know?" His colleague, a younger doctor who had recently joined the hospital, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He respected Maya deeply, though he hadn't heard what had happened between her and Dr. Morgan earlier. Now, hearing the casual arrogance in Dr. Morgan's tone, he wasn't sure how to respond. Yeah, he muttered, trying to deflect the topic. He didn't want to get on Dr. Morgan's bad side, but he also didn't feel right letting the comments slide. Maybe she was just having an off moment. Dr. Morgan shrugged, dismissing the suggestion. "Maybe. Still, I expect more from the staff here. No room for mistakes in a place like this." Unbeknownst to Dr. Morgan, whispers had already started spreading throughout the hospital. As word of Maya's true role reached more and more people, a sense of unease began to settle over the staff. Maya, however, wasn't one to let an issue fester without addressing it. She wasn't interested in revenge or public retribution, but she knew something had to be done. This wasn't just about Dr. Morgan's behavior, it was about a deeper, systemic problem in the hospital's culture that allowed staff to be treated with such disrespect. Back in her office, Maya began drafting a formal report. She didn't intend to recount every detail of the incident with Dr. Morgan. This was about more than a single encounter. It was about fostering a change in the environment and setting new standards for respect and dignity across all roles in the hospital. Maya focused on the bigger picture in her report, emphasizing the need for improved training on respect and communication, particularly between doctors and nurses. She addressed the subtle biases that often went unchallenged, especially in the way minority staff were treated. Her goal wasn't to humiliate Dr. Morgan, but to ensure no one else would have to endure what she had. Maya knew it was only a matter of time before Dr. Morgan realized his mistake. She didn't plan to confront him directly, trusting that hospital leadership would handle it. As whispers spread and Dr. Morgan started hearing about Maya's true role, the weight of his actions would inevitably catch up with him. And by then, it would be too late to undo the impact he had caused. Maya sat in the boardroom, waiting for the meeting to begin. The room was cold and sterile, filled with the quiet murmur of hospital administrators shuffling papers and whispering among themselves. She felt the significance of what was about to happen pressing down on her. But she remained calm and composed. Today wasn't just about addressing what had happened between her and Dr. Morgan. It was about confronting a deeper cultural issue within the hospital that had allowed this incident to occur in the first place. Dr. Morgan entered, exuding his usual confidence. He gave a brisk nod to senior hospital management before sitting directly across from Maya, unaware of the gravity of the meeting. To him, this was just another routine discussion, one he assumed would end with him walking out unscathed. The head of hospital management, Mr. Thompson, opened the meeting with a serious tone. Dr. Morgan, we're here to discuss an incident that occurred recently between you and one of our staff members. We've received a formal complaint regarding your conduct, and we need to hear your side of the story. Dr. Morgan straightened in his chair, a hint of frustration in his voice. Look, I was just doing my job, he began. I have to keep the staff in line, especially when things aren't running smoothly. The nurse in question was slowing down the workflow, so I stepped in to make sure patient care wasn't compromised. It wasn't personal, it was about maintaining order. Maya listened in silence, her hands resting calmly in her lap. She had anticipated this response. It was clear Dr. Morgan felt his actions were not only justified but essential. His tone was defensive, his posture rigid, as if daring anyone to challenge his authority. Mr. Thompson glanced at Maya, signaling that it was her turn to speak. She met Dr. Morgan's gaze briefly before addressing the room. I understand the importance of maintaining efficiency in patient care, she began, her voice steady and composed. However, what happened that day wasn't about efficiency, it was about respect, or rather, the lack of it. Dr. Morgan shifted uncomfortably but didn't interrupt. Maya continued, Dr. Morgan, you didn't just correct my actions, you belittled me publicly in front of both staff and patients. You questioned my competence without bothering to ask who I was or what my experience might be. And in doing so, you made assumptions rooted in bias. The room fell silent, Maya's words hanging heavily in the air. Dr. Morgan's expression changed, a flicker of doubt crossing his face as he tried to process her words. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Taking a deep breath, Maya continued, What you didn't know, Dr. Morgan, is that I am not just a nurse. I am the medical director of this hospital. A stunned silence fell over the room as Dr. Morgan's eyes widened in disbelief. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but quickly closed it, his usual confidence evaporating in an instant. The quiet that followed was thick with realization as everyone absorbed the weight of Maya's words. The arrogance and superiority that had defined Dr. Morgan's posture moments earlier were now replaced by visible discomfort. I didn't feel the need to correct you in front of the staff that day, Maya continued, her voice unwavering. I could have, but that wasn't the point. The issue here isn't about titles, it's about how we treat one another in this hospital, especially across lines of race and hierarchy. Your behavior wasn't just unprofessional, it was dismissive, and it reflects a deeper problem that goes beyond this one incident. Dr. Morgan was clearly caught off guard, his face flushed with embarrassment. He glanced at the hospital management, perhaps hoping for support, but found none. He stammered slightly, struggling to find his words. I didn't realize. I didn't know who you were, but I wasn't trying to be. Mr. Thompson leaned forward, his voice breaking through the tension. Dr. Morgan, this is about more than just a misunderstanding. It's about the culture here and the way staff are treated. This incident cannot simply be dismissed. Dr. Morgan fell silent, feeling the full weight of his actions and realizing the impact they had made. The weight of the situation was beginning to sink in for Dr. Morgan, and it was clear he was struggling to find a way to salvage his pride. Finally, he took a shaky breath, his voice now quieter, stripped of its earlier bravado. I see that I made a mistake. I'm sorry for the way I treated you, Dr. Anderson. I didn't intend to disrespect you, but I understand now that my actions were inappropriate. His apology hung in the air, awkward and tentative. Maya regarded him with an impassive expression. She could see the discomfort in his eyes, the struggle he was having in admitting fault. But Maya wasn't looking for personal vindication, she was looking for change. I appreciate your apology, she replied, her voice calm and measured. But this isn't about me, it's about how we move forward as a hospital. We need to address the biases that allowed this to happen. This is an opportunity for all of us to reflect on how we treat each other, regardless of position, race, or background. The hospital management team nodded in agreement, and Mr. Thompson spoke up, addressing the room. We take this incident seriously and will be conducting a full internal review of our policies and staff conduct. Additionally, we'll implement mandatory bias training and reinforce a culture of respect and professionalism across all levels of staff. Maya felt a sense of relief as she heard these words. This wasn't about punishing Dr. Morgan. It was about making sure the hospital took steps to create a more inclusive and respectful environment for everyone. She hadn't wanted to humiliate him or seek revenge. Now she felt reassured that genuine change could come from this. As the meeting concluded, Dr. Morgan stood, still visibly shaken by what had transpired. He looked at Maya once more, his voice barely above a whisper. "Again, I'm sorry, I'll do better." Maya simply nodded, her expression neutral. She knew that only time would tell if his apology would lead to real change. But for now, she had done what she set out to do. She had stood her ground with grace and dignity, using this moment to push for the systemic change that was so needed. As she left the meeting room, Maya felt a sense of closure. She hadn't escalated the conflict, but she hadn't let it slide either. She had held Dr. Morgan accountable, not by tearing him down, but by holding him and the hospital to a higher standard. The real work was just beginning, but Maya knew this was a step in the right direction. In the days that followed, changes at the hospital became noticeable. A renewed commitment to respect and inclusivity began to take root, and Maya saw a glimpse of the culture shift she had always hoped for. After the meeting, senior management issued a formal announcement about the new policies being implemented. Diversity and respect training sessions became mandatory for all hospital staff, from the highest-ranking doctors to the custodial team. Maya played an active role in shaping these reforms, ensuring the sessions went beyond surface-level discussions to address deeper issues, bias, power dynamics, and racial inequities that had long influenced the workplace. She knew her experience with Dr. Morgan wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a larger cultural problem. Determined to make lasting changes, she used her position to prevent others from enduring what she had. Staff members, especially those who had witnessed the incident, viewed Maya with newfound respect. Nurses who had seen her calmly endure Dr. Morgan's attacks without revealing her true identity now understood her strength and grace. Conversations in the break rooms changed, with staff openly discussing how everyone in the hospital, regardless of rank or race, deserved to be treated with dignity. The focus shifted away from hierarchy and toward fostering a supportive environment where each person felt valued. Maya became a symbol of that change, a leader who didn't need to flaunt her authority but used it to uplift others. Meanwhile, Dr. Morgan began a personal transformation. Initially, his apology to Maya had been formal and somewhat reluctant, more a response to the pressure he was under than a sincere reflection. But over the next few days, the realization of Maya's position and the humiliation he felt led him to reflect deeply on his behavior, not only toward Maya, but also toward other nurses and junior staff. He had always thought of himself as demanding excellence, but now he recognized the damage his attitude had caused. With a new sense of purpose, Dr. Morgan approached the diversity training sessions, no longer viewing them as something to check off his list. Instead, he engaged sincerely, listening to perspectives from colleagues he had rarely considered before. He began to reevaluate his actions, as well as the culture that had enabled him to act that way for so long. In one especially meaningful session, Dr. Morgan stood up and shared his experience with Maya, admitting to the group how his assumptions had led him to treat her unfairly and how he was working to change. His vulnerability surprised many and earned him newfound respect. Although it wasn't easy, he made an effort to rebuild trust with his colleagues, particularly the nurses. He even began mentoring younger doctors, emphasizing the importance of teamwork and respect for all members of the hospital staff. Beyond the hospital walls, Maya's story began to spread. News of the changes taking place within the hospital reached other institutions, prompting discussions about racial and gender biases in professional settings. Other hospitals, particularly those with similarly hierarchical structures, started reaching out to Maya for guidance on implementing their own reforms. In an industry often resistant to change, Maya's experience sparked meaningful conversations about power dynamics and inequality. Maya was soon invited to speak at several conferences, where she shared her experience not just as a personal story of overcoming injustice, but as a powerful case study on how systemic change could begin with individual actions and accountability. Her story resonated widely, inspiring professionals across the medical community to re-examine their own workplace cultures and strive for greater equity and respect. Through her individual actions, Maya became a sought-after speaker at medical schools, hospital leadership summits, and diversity and inclusion panels. She emphasized the importance of empathy, open-mindedness, and accountability at every level of the healthcare system. Maya wasn't seeking fame, but she understood the significance of using her platform to advocate for broader changes, especially those that would benefit marginalized groups in the workforce. In quiet moments, Maya would reflect on the long road that had brought her to this point. She thought back to the early days of her career when she had faced countless obstacles, often feeling she had to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good. Growing up, she had never imagined herself holding such influence. Yet, through sheer determination and the unwavering support of her family and mentors, she had risen to the role of medical director. Now, she was in a position to create the very changes she had once dreamed of. A more equitable, inclusive workplace, where people were judged by their abilities, not by the color of their skin or their position in the hierarchy. Maya often shared these reflections with her close friends and family. One evening, as she sat with her husband and their 2 children, she expressed gratitude for the opportunity to make a real difference. "I never asked to be in the spotlight," she said softly, "but if this experience can help others, then it was worth it." Her husband smiled and squeezed her hand. "You're changing things, Maya. People are listening. That's a legacy." Maya wasn't interested in personal glory, but she was proud of what she had accomplished. She had transformed a painful, humiliating incident into a catalyst for lasting change. The hospital was a better place because of it, and she hoped the conversations she had sparked would continue to ripple outward, inspiring other institutions to follow suit. In the months that followed, the changes at the hospital began to take root. Training sessions became a regular part of staff development, and hospital leadership made a dedicated effort to promote more diverse and inclusive practices. Nurses, junior doctors, and even custodial staff reported feeling more respected and valued. The incident with Dr. Morgan became a part of the hospital's history, a reminder of how far they had come, and how much work still remained. As for Maya, she continued her work both within the hospital and in the broader medical community. Always humble, never seeking attention for herself. Maya didn't seek attention for herself. Instead, she focused steadfastly on her mission: to create a workplace where everyone, regardless of background or position, was treated with respect and dignity. She understood that the journey was far from over, but she was committed to seeing it through. In the end, Maya's story wasn't just about her. It was about a hospital, a community, and an entire profession that had been compelled to confront its own biases and shortcomings. And while much work remained, the future looked brighter, thanks to Maya's quiet strength and her unwavering commitment to justice.